What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to your morning watch list. So we're going to get ready to break down the market for you and run you through some of the important things you guys need to understand today. So first things first, what we'll do is start here on the S&P 500, and we'll even touch a little bit on the Qs or the NASDAQ, okay? So we're starting here on a daily chart. So this is long term. This is over the past year. And let me kind of shrink this down a bit. All right, so long-term trend, white line in the middle. We went over trend, we came back to trend. We went over trend to resistance, we came back down to trend support. And you can see this is where the market is arguably trying to bounce. If we go to the 4-hour chart, it'll become a little bit more evident we're trying to bounce. You'll be able to see that of a curling formation. So you can see we've dropped, we've fought, and now we're trying to curl up. So right now, it's very possible that we see the market actually bounce a little bit off this move. But overall, it does seem like the market is struggling. Now, what we're thinking we're probably going to see in the market is maybe a long move back up towards the 335 mark before we try to continue heading down. So what we would have to have happen in order to see the market move up towards the 335 mark on the S&P 500 would probably, in the immediate, would probably be to see it stay over the $329.50 price point. Now, the reason we pick that point is if you look at the market, look at the fighting, right? We resist, we go down. We resist, we go down. We resist, we go down. We resist, we pull back, we break out. We go back under. We resist, we go over. Can we hold the support here? So over this 329.50s price is really where we need this market to hold above, probably today or at some point here today, to see this trend continuing back to the upside. So this morning we have gapped over, so here's the gap over all of the past resistance points. The last time we did it, we jumped over, then got pushed right back under. And then we fought it. Today we've gapped over. Now the question is, can we hold over? If we can hold over, it's going to show that the market has a little bit of a bullish kind of view to it in the immediate. If we fade back under, then that's telling us that the market is still a little weak in the immediate. So today we're watching for the S&P 500 to stay above the 329.50 price point to suggest that we have some bullish activity coming in the immediate, okay? Moving over to a hot stock is NIO, okay? And we're not going to look at the NASDAQ because the NASDAQ is almost identical to the SPY right now. So the analysis that I just gave you on the SPY is pretty much the same as the NASDAQ or the Qs for right now. NIO with another strong overnight gap in run so far pre-market. On the daily chart, we'll see that we have resistance at about $35. So right now, we don't see a need for an extremely big selling day or selling move until NIO gets to some strong resistance. And we believe that that strong resistance point is going to be right around 35. So we were anticipating today that we might in fact see NIO press all the way up towards that $35 mark and maybe a little bit over 35 to say 35.20, 35.30s before we actually see any sort of big selling. And now the reason we say that is because, well, we know that the $35 price point is long-term trending resistance. Do we know if the price is going to go to 35? No, we don't. But what we do know is if in the event the price does go to 35, we're hitting strong resistance. And at that point, we might suggest to reverse the trade and go bearish, okay? So whether or not we get to 35 is another story. But when we get to 35, and if we get to 35, we do know that that is looked at as a strong resistance point, and it becomes a low-risk environment to bet bearishly on the stock, okay? And even if it squeezes through 35 is the low risk starting point as a reversal short on that stock. So we're going to be closely watching in the 35 prices to reverse NIO back down for a little bit of a short move. Now, this is a very strong stock. There's a lot of hype behind it, so you do have to be careful if you're going to try to do something like that. Okay, moving forward, what we'll touch on is, one of the penny stocks that was moving today. So ANPC, this spiked up pre-market, then it faded out, and it's tried to bounce a couple times. We kind of had this little mini flag pattern here. And if I shrink this, you might see it. It's more evident, right? So we kind of do it like this. So we had a little bull flag there, try to break up, fail. We try to reverse into a squeeze here, failed. We're trying to reverse right now, and yet we haven't succeeded thus far. This is the only penny stock so far today that's held up, pretty well. I don't want to say held up, but it's one of the penny stocks that has sort of the most volume. So we'll continue following it. The lower it gets pre-market close to this trend line, the less profitable of a short it sometimes is, and that's probably why we haven't seen this drop out too much more, is because we have essentially entered the lower cycle. Okay, if we take the white and look on this side, this is kind of the upper cycle, and if you take a look at this, we've crossed below trend. Now we're kind of into the lower cycle. So it's a more profitable short when you're all the way up here, and then as it fades down to these levels, it's less profitable. So there's more of an incentive to potentially go long. So right now, we're just going to keep this on long watch to start for the morning if in the event we're still kind of down in these deviate lower levels, okay? And there really wouldn't be a big snap play unless you were to actually break down the support or break down the level of $4.03, okay? So for right now, we're probably going to kind of sit patiently and watch us more long bias to start the day, anticipating we might see a quick spike and then anticipate the stock to roll over and dump out and crash. All right. Today, we don't really have too many earnings reports that we were all crazy about, but you do have PayPal that we'll be reporting later today, which I think could be an interesting one to watch simply because there's a lot of hype surrounding Bitcoin right now, and PayPal had recently just bought $50 million worth of Bitcoin. Bitcoin just recently, like I think it was last night, broke the 14,000 price point. We should see resistance here. It would make sense. We have been seeing resistance, but it makes sense to see probably Bitcoin start to pull back from here. And again, if you look at how this is set up, remember how I was talking upper cycle and lower cycle? So if we go back and just look at ANPC, on the intraday. So look at this on a 1 minute chart. You notice how it was easier for it to sell down when it was up here, and then as it's come down to this level, so just think about the white line in the middle, that's just call it the 50-yard mark, right? So if you're football fans, 50-yard mark. Below this, you're on this side of the football field, and above this, you're on this side. So this is the bearish football field, and this is the bullish football field. Just think of it for a simple approach. Okay, when you're down here, it's a lot of times harder for the stock to sell off, whereas if you're up here, it'll be easier for it to sell off. And if we go back and just look at Bitcoin as an example, comparison, now we'll go to the 4-hour chart, so we're going to look at a longer term chart. Look at where the 50-yard line is. So the price is above, we're on the bearish side, and you can see we roll down, and then we get to the lower side and we do not break down, and then we go back up. And that's because the market likes to go through cycles. So we go through a low phase where we're accumulating, and then we push up, and then we sell into the high phase, and then we break down, and we go into the low phase, and it looks like it's going to keep going lower, but then you buy up, and then we push up. So we've made it to a price point where it makes sense to see Bitcoin start to get some weakness. And we should not anticipate a new breaking out move unless you were to break over the $14,000 mark, which you can clearly see we've been resisting, right? We went flag pattern, right to resistance, sold off. Bounce back towards resistance, sold off. Bounce back towards resistance, sold off. So we are not breaking this $14,000 mark for the time being. And it's probably good to suggest that we might need a more aggressive pullback on Bitcoin before we could get back up and over that $14,000 price point. All right, really, that's really all I have for you here this morning. Not too much more to go over. The market is trying to bounce. I think the whole world's really just kind of ready for this election to be over. So we got another, who knows, maybe it's another couple weeks. We're not going to find out the full results of the election on November 3rd. We should find out probably a couple weeks after, with the way the parameters of this election changed on the fly. So again, we're used to having the results in night of the election night, but the rules have changed this year. All right, so we're not going to know probably the night of the election, or sorry, we're not going to know the night of voting. You get the point. So again, there might be some uncertainty that still kind of sits in the market for another couple of weeks, even after November 3rd. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, everybody have a great rest of your day. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Hit the thumbs up button before you head out, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.